Hey there, guys. Alright, today we are back with some more of the Great War, and this time we are on to week 117. French plans for glory at Verdun. Romania stops the Germans. I have a feeling that's not going to last long. Before I dive in, though, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you joined the Discord and followed me over at Twitch. Okay, really have nothing to add here at the beginning of this video, so we're just going to go ahead and dive straight into this. I like the redesign on the studio here. It's lighter. I can see more clearly. The rain is gone.
When Romania joined the Allies in the war 8 weeks ago, Germany halted all...
It's been fucking 8 weeks already. Jesus. I've said this. I say this all the fucking time. YouTube's gonna hit me for swearing within the first 2 minutes of... God, YouTube is stupid. Anyways, what was it? Oh yeah, it's been 8 weeks since Romania joined. Man, as I keep saying, time is very misconstrued when you're watching this weekly series, 2 episodes a week.
all offensive actions on all fronts until they had dealt with Romania. The might of the four Central Powers had descended on Romania under German leadership, and things looked grim. But you know what? This week, Romania stops the Germans.
Woo! More dead people. Yay, war.
I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. Last week saw the beginning and end of the 8th Battle of the Isonzo River, with high Italian casualties for little gain. The Romanians were being pushed back in both Transylvania and Dobrogea, and repeated British and French attacks at the Somme failed to gain ground, though British Commander-in-Chief Sir Douglas Haig vowed to continue the offensive all winter if necessary. Here's what came next. More attacks at the Somme came next, for starters. The French actually did well there this week. On the 14th, a brilliant French attack west of Belloy-en-Santerre captured the first German line, and on the 18th, they carried the whole front between La Maisonnette Chateau and Blache. As for the British, they attacked on the 18th, and it was, like their attacks on the 7th and the 12th, a complete failure. The artillery bombardment had missed the German defenses, and their artillery and machine guns were still intact and active. And according to the official British war history, these were the conditions at the Somme. By the middle of October, conditions behind the battlefront were so bad as to make mere existence a severe trial of body and spirit.
Fuck that.
Little could be seen from the air through the rain and mist. It was often impossible to locate with accuracy the new German trenches and shell hole positions. It is no matter of surprise that the British artillery sometimes fired short or placed its barrages too far ahead. Bursts of high explosive were smothered in the ooze. Many guns were too worn for accurate fire. The ground was so deep in mud that to move an 18-pounder, 10 or 12 horses were often needed. The infantry, sometimes wet to the skin and almost exhausted by 0 hour, were often condemned to struggle painfully through the mud under heavy fire against objectives vaguely defined and difficult of recognition.
Oof.
It seemed that operations on at least this part of the front would have to be suspended. But Haig did not come to that conclusion. He did scale back his fantasy expectations that we talked about a couple weeks ago, but that still misses the point. Under these weather conditions, taking anything was unrealistic. You'd think General Sir Henry Rawlinson might point this out to Haig, but he did the opposite, saying that an attack scheduled for next week needed to be a success because it was undesirable for the army to remain for the winter in the low ground they now occupied. Two things. Maybe, just maybe, the failures of the Fourth Army on the 7th, 12th, and 18th of October suggest that they lacked the power to improve their position. And also, maybe the time to think about their position was a month ago when the army had plowed ahead from the ridge to the low ground. Just saying. But another army was plowing ahead this week in the Balkans. On the 18th, the Serbs took Brud, and they were generally having a good week. Under Field Marshal Misic, they broke through the Bulgarian lines a few kilometers, taking Veliselo and Baldensi. Now, at the beginning of this two-day battle, the Bulgarians had the advantage. They held the high ground behind the Cherna River and could roll boulders down on the Serbs. But when the Serbs rushed the heights, they had big squares of white calico cloth on their backs, and their leaders had red and white flags to show the farthest position reached. So the Serbian artillery avoided shelling them, and when they'd rush up one crest, the artillery would simply pound the next one ahead until eventually all of the crests were covered with little fluttering red and white flags. There was also fighting in the mountains further to the north. German General Erich von Falkenhayn had been making headway against the Romanians in the mountain passes, but he was having some real trouble this week. On the 15th and 16th, there was desperate fighting in the Oituz and Vulcan passes, particularly near the railroad terminus at Campulum. On the 17th, Falkenhayn managed to squeeze through the Ghiamesh Pass and reach Agash, 10 kilometers within Romanian territory. On the 18th, however, the Romanians won the day at both the Ghiamesh Pass and Agash, and Falkenhayn and the German army had been stopped. The story of the Great War says, there seems to be no doubt that had the Romanians been able to devote all their forces and resources to the defense of the Hungarian frontier, they would probably have been able to hold back Falkenhayn's forces. But Mackensen had forced them to split their strength. And so the out-equipped and outgunned Romanians held the Germans back in the mountains for the moment. But further south, on the 19th, General August von Mackensen began a new offensive in Dobrogea. Yet another offensive was about to get going over in France. The French were preparing for the counterstroke at Verdun that was to try to retake Fort Douaumont. They wouldn't attack until they had local superiority. 3 divisions in the front, 3 to follow, and 2 in reserve. General Philippe Pétain brought in guns from the whole front, 650 in all, including 2 400mm Schneider-Clouseau railway guns. Ammunition arrived all through September and early October. 15,000 tons of shells. General Robert Nivelle's task was to organize the creeping barrage. The infantry would move forward 100 meters in 4 minutes, which was 70 behind the field guns and 150 behind the heavy guns. Now, success depended upon precise communications between infantry and artillery. So Nivelle laid telephone wire in trenches 6 feet deep that was virtually immune to shell fire. It was an enormous task. The infantry preparations were no less gargantuan. At Stanville, a replica of the battlefield, including a full-scale Fort Douaumont, was laid out and units rehearsed until they knew it blindfolded. They also brought in the engineer who had organized freshwater supplies when the Panama Canal was being dug, and he set up a system of transportable canvas pipe.
Oh my god, yeah, the dude that the people that built the Panama Canal, they would still be alive at this point in time. Yo, time is crazy.
To bring water to the fort once taken. They were not going to repeat the failure at Fort Vaux, which was lost for lack of water. There was a mood of great optimism. The German camp was the opposite. They knew they were about to be attacked. They knew that high command was waiting for a good psychological moment to leave the forward positions at Verdun. The men were exhausted, some having been there since February without relief. A steady bombardment for weeks had prevented the frontline troops from improving their trenches or their barbed wire. The rains, freezes, thaws, and more rains had caused some German trenches to collapse and frostbitten feet. Desertions had reached a new high. And one thing that the Germans had not realized about Fort Douaumont, the months-long pounding it had taken had eroded, inch by inch, the protective layer of dirt covering it. It had been, in some places, nearly 6 meters deep. Now it was dangerously exposed. On October 19th, the preliminary bombardment blasted off as French observation planes swarmed through the skies. And in Greece, the French and their allies were maneuvering as well. They demanded and got the Piraeus-Larissa Railroad. It seems an Athens...
Yeah, I think we are now at the point for the Germans where they cannot win this war. I think we're solidly at the point now that Germany cannot win the war, even when Russia is kicked out of the war in 1917. I mean, that's still like a year from now because Russia doesn't leave it until the October Revolution. So yeah, we're at the point Germany really. It's just obvious at this point now to me that like Germany's defeat was. Well, I won't say necessarily like not the defeat that they experienced that we know of, in 1918. Not that defeat, but like the ability to take out France is long gone now. It's gone. I'd like. Part of me thinks that there was still a chance in 1916, right? Like around with Verdun, I'd say they still had a chance really to take out the French. But now, with all of the fronts that are open, Greece heating up, nah. Germans' best hope now at this point in time is just a status quo kind of defeat. But we all know the participants in this war are not going to settle for status quo. They are going to settle only for complete and utter unconditional surrender of their opponent.
This division had been moving along the line, with a regiment entrenching themselves before the king's palace at Tatoi. And there was a fear that King Constantine would retire with his army and dig in Thessaly until he could join the Bulgarians and Germans. The surrender of the railroad made this event impossible. It also provoked riots and demonstrations against the Allies, and the police remained passive and in some cases joined the protests. French Admiral Dufournier, who had already seized the Greek fleet, demanded that command of the Greek police force now be passed to him. This happened. Then
this is a fucking coup. They're just occupying. Whoa!
The royalist press went crazy about that, but the French established censorship, and that was that.
Okay, so the French have couped Greece. They've taken over the country.
Did I mention that Greece was still neutral? That doesn't sound like how you treat neutral. Oh well, either way, that was the week. French success and British failure at the Somme as the weather deteriorates. The Serbs advancing in one set of mountains and the Germans stopped in another, and the French making plans for glory at Verdun. It's pretty impressive that the Romanians managed to stop Falkenhayn, even if it turns out to only be temporary. They were short on wheeled vehicles and machine guns, and many of their soldiers had only single-shot black powder rifles, but stop them they did. But Romania was fighting on two fronts against four nations, and though they could count on a bit of Russian help, none of the other allies could send troops, and Romania could not possibly hold out forever alone. And tens of thousands of young Romanian men would die. But that's nothing new. That's just the same old ho-hum day-to-day of modern war.
Yay! Woo.
If you want to learn more about Romania...
And that was French plans for glory at Verdun. Romania stops the Germans. The Great War, week 117. Got nothing new to add here at the end of the video. It's just same old, death, death, death. Hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.